In 2026, the average Canadian spends 40% of their life working just to pay for a roof they don't even own. But what if I told you there are places in this country that don't officially exist on a municipal map? No mayor, no property tax collectors, no building permits. These are the forgotten islands, located in Canada's unorganized territories. On paper, they're the ultimate loophole. But as you're about to see, free is the most expensive price you will ever pay. Today, we are counting down 10 islands where the laws are a suggestion and the land is yours, if you can survive it. And stick around for number 1, because it's a place so secret, the government once tried to erase it from the map entirely. Number 10, Bragg's Island. Our journey begins in Bonavista Bay, Newfoundland. On a map, Bragg's Island looks like a random speck of granite. But to a historian, it is a crime scene. To a homesteader, it is a second chance. In the 1950s, this was a thriving community. 300 people lived here, supported by the saltcod fishery. They had a school, a church, and a way of life that hadn't changed since the 1800s. Then, the government decided they were too expensive to maintain. They were offered $1,000 to leave, an amount that wouldn't even buy the wood for a new house today. This is resettlement. Families literally sawed their homes in half, put them on floating drums, and towed them across the sea to the mainland. What was left behind? A ghost island. Here is why Bragg's Island is on this list in 2026. Because it was abandoned by the government, it fell into a jurisdictional black hole. It is an unincorporated zone. Most people think you can just claim an abandoned house here. Stop right there. If you try to move into one of the 2 original houses still standing, you're trespassing on private heritage. But look at the land around it. In Newfoundland, you can apply for a Crown land grant for residential or recreational use. In 2026, the Provincial Land Use Atlas shows massive sections of Bragg's Island as available. Because there is no municipal government, there is no one to charge you property tax. There is no town council to tell you your cabin isn't up to code. You are under the direct authority of the province, and the province is 300 kilometers away. Free land doesn't mean a free life. Let's look at the 2026 logistics of Bragg's Island. First, there is no ferry. To live here, you need a high-prowed boat capable of handling 4-meter swells. That's a $40,000 investment before you even buy a nail. Next, the service gap. In 2026, the nearest hospital is in Gander. If you have an appendicitis on a Tuesday in November when the gales are blowing 80 knots, you aren't going to the hospital. You're staying on the island. This is the isolation tax. You pay it in risk instead of dollars. But wait, there's a 2026 loophole that digital nomads are starting to use. Because the island is unorganized, people are building temporary structures. I'm talking about PVC pods and yurts on floating platforms. If it isn't permanently affixed to the land, it often falls outside the definition of a dwelling for tax purposes. You can run a 6-figure business from a clear plastic bubble while watching a North Atlantic storm roll in. With a Starlink Mini and a portable LFP battery bank, you have better internet on this ghost island than you do in downtown St. John's. Bragg's Island is the Atlantic's forgotten ghost. It's for the person who wants to live among the ruins of the past. But if you think this is isolated, wait until we head west. Number 9, Pelee Island. If you drive 800 kilometers south of Vancouver or 400 kilometers south of Toronto, you don't end up in the United States. You end up here, Pelee Island. This is the southernmost inhabited point in Canada, sitting at the same latitude as Rome and Northern California. They call it the Banana Belt of the North. Because of a geographic quirk known as the lake effect, Pelee Island enjoys more heat units than any other place in the country. While the rest of Canada is shoveling 3 feet of snow in April, the residents of Pelee are already watching their gardens sprout. It is a place of biological impossible things, prickly pear cactus growing wild, rare giant swallowtail butterflies, and Carolinian forests that look like they belong in the Carolinas because they do. But don't let the summer breeze fool you. This isn't a vacation. It's a survival test. Most of the islands on our list are unorganized, meaning they have no local government. Pelee is different. It is a municipality, but a very fragile one. In 2026, the permanent population is just 235 people. Imagine trying to maintain 10,000 acres of roads, shorelines, and water systems with only 200 taxpayers. Here is the freedom loophole. Because the tax base is so small, the township is constantly fighting to maintain services. This has led to a fascinating administrative limbo. Large sections of the island are under the protection of the Nature Conservancy of Canada. If you buy a small parcel near these zones, you're technically in a municipality, but you are effectively living in a wilderness. The 2026 budget shows that policing costs and infrastructure repairs are hitting their limits. For the homesteader, this means a hands-off governance style. As long as you aren't bothering the rare snails or the Atlantic flyway migration routes, the permit office is a tiny building with a very short reach. From April to early December, Pelee is a paradise accessible by a 90-minute ferry ride. But then the ice moves in. In winter, the ferry stops. The only way on or off the island is by a small air taxi service from Windsor. This is the winter lockout. In 2026, the price of freedom is absolute isolation. If a blizzard hits and the planes can't fly, you are on your own. There is no emergency room. There is no quick trip to the store. You live by the rhythm of your pantry and the reliability of your generator. As the mayor of Pelee noted in 2026, the small tax base means they have to prioritize. In a heavy winter, the secondary roads, where the off-gridders live, are the last to be plowed. You might be trapped in your house for a week, watching the Lake Erie storms batter your windows. But wait, there's a reason why people are flocking to Pelee in 2026 despite the lockout. It's the microclimate hack. Because Pelee has the longest frost-free season in Ontario, savvy digital homesteaders are building high-tech greenhouses. While the mainland is paying $8 for a wilted head of lettuce, Pelee residents are growing their own and selling it to each other in a closed-loop economy. With Starlink Residential providing high-speed access to the global market, you can be a virtual vintner or a remote consultant while living in a climate that should legally be in Virginia. You aren't just saving on property taxes. You're saving on the very cost of staying alive. Pelee is the warm void. It's the southernmost dream for those who want the sun but hate the system. But if you think Lake Erie is big, you haven't seen the inland sea of Quebec. Number 8. Anticosti Island, the Chocolate Kingdom. Most of Canada was built by pioneers, loggers, and the CPR. But Anticosti Island? It was built on chocolate. In 1895, French chocolate tycoon Henri Menier purchased this entire 8,000 square kilometer island to serve as his private hunting estate. He was essentially a king, building a tower-topped chateau, issuing his own currency, and importing exotic animals to a land where mainland rules didn't apply. Menier is long gone, but that private kingdom energy remains. Even in 2026, Anticosti is one of the most physically and administratively isolated places in the Northern Hemisphere. It is 17 times larger than Prince Edward Island. Yet its only town, Port Menier, has a population that could barely fill a high school gym. The most startling statistic? In 1896, Menier introduced 220 white-tailed deer. Today, those deer own the island. With over 160,000 deer, roughly 20 per square kilometer, they have reshaped the ecology so thoroughly they caused the local black bears to go extinct by eating every berry bush in sight. For the 2026 homesteader, this creates a bizarre hunting economy. You don't visit the store for steak. You go to your freezer for venison. However, there is a 2026 catch. In 2023, Anticosti was named a UNESCO World Heritage Site for its prehistoric fossils. You aren't just living in a hunting park anymore. You're in a global museum. The provincial government has tightened regulations on building, and most of the land is locked under CPAC, the Quebec agency that controls the cabins and logistics. Living free here comes with a high subscription fee. Everything is flown in or brought by the Bella Disgain supply ship. Furthermore, French is the language of survival. If you don't speak it, navigating 2026 land titles or hunting tags is nearly impossible. Yet a new prospector class is arriving, eco-nomads. They come for the world's best record of the first mass extinction. Armed with high-speed satellite links, these digital architects and researchers are realizing that while you can't own the fossils, the land around them is a sanctuary. Anticosti is the Paleolithic paradise, a kingdom of deer and ancient stone where you escape the taxman by escaping the present century. Anticosti is the Paleolithic paradise. It's a kingdom of deer and ancient stones. But if you think a Chocolate King's Island is strange, you haven't seen the inland sea of Ontario. Because on island number 7, we're heading to the largest freshwater island on Earth, a place where the government's grid simply stops and the cost of a single drink of water can break your bank. Stop. Before we hit the top 7, you need to understand the Crown Land loophole. You've heard you can camp for 21 days for free. But did you know that in unorganized territories, camping can legally include portable structures that the government has no authority to tax? In 2026, people are using modular floating docks to live on islands that don't even have a lot number. No land, no taxes. But wait until you see what happens when the ice moves in. Number 7, Manitoulin Island. The Shield of Freedom. This is Manitoulin Island, the largest freshwater island on the planet. To put its scale in perspective, it is larger than the entire state of Rhode Island. But don't let the bustling tourism and vibrant indigenous culture of the southern tip fool you. The deeper you drive into the interior, the more this system begins to evaporate. Manitoulin is a complex patchwork of jurisdictions. You have First Nations territories, incorporated townships, and then the holy grail for the freedom seeker, unorganized districts A and B. In these zones, you aren't just a resident. You're a pioneer standing on a 450-million-year-old limestone slab where the traditional rules of Canadian life simply don't apply. In 2026, the appeal of Manitoulin's unorganized sectors is purely financial. Provincial land tax, PLT. While a homeowner in Sudbury or Toronto is handing over thousands to their city, residents here pay a mere fraction directly to the province. There is no mayor to fund, no town hall to heat, and no local bylaws dictating what color you paint your fence or where you park your trailer. But the Shield always takes its cut. Manitoulin is part of the Niagara Escarpment, meaning the ground is solid limestone and dolostone. In 2026, the cost of a free life is hidden in the geology. With no municipal water lines, you must drill. But you aren't drilling through soil, you're boring through some of the hardest rock in North America. A standard well in 2026 can exceed $25,000, with no guarantee the water won't be sulfury or hard enough to ruin your pipes within a year. What cements Manitoulin as the modern frontier is the tech. Historically, these lots were communication dead zones. Today, digital nomads have moved in. By pairing LFP battery storage with satellite internet, they are running international firms from the edge of a limestone cliff. They bypass the $50,000 per kilometer cost of running hydro lines by becoming their own utility company. You aren't just escaping taxes, you're escaping the power grid itself. Manitoulin is for those who can afford the high entry cost of infrastructure to win the long-term war against governance. Number 6, Reindeer Island. The fortress of the Boreal. Most people think of Manitoba as endless flat prairies and wheat fields. But in the center of the province lies a massive inland sea, Lake Winnipeg. Hidden in the heart of its northern basin sits a 30-kilometer-long spearhead of sand, spruce, and isolation called Reindeer Island. This isn't a destination for weekend campers. Reindeer Island is a designated provincial wilderness park and remains one of the most untouched ecosystems in the country. There are no roads, no permanent docks, and no electricity. It is a biological fortress, a place where the system doesn't just stop. It never arrived in the first place. In 2026, the appeal of Reindeer Island is total, unfiltered silence. Because it is so remote, the only governance you'll encounter is a park ranger who might fly over once a month in a twin otter. If you're looking to exist in a space where no one is checking your ID or asking for a building permit, this is it. However, Reindeer Island has a defense mechanism far more effective than the RCMP, the fly season. From June to August, the Boreal forest produces billions of black flies and mosquitoes. This isn't a minor annoyance. It is a psychological war. In 2026, off-gridders have reported that without specialized mesh suits and chemical protection, you cannot survive outside for more than 3 minutes. This is the Boreal tax. The land is free, but you pay for it in blood and sanity. Logistics here are a nightmare. To get supplies to the unorganized northern affairs zone surrounding the island, you have to wait for the world to freeze. You have a narrow 8-week window in January to haul in your solar arrays and fuel via the treacherous winter road. With 2026 climate data showing these road seasons becoming shorter and more unpredictable, living here turns you into a logistics expert. You must calculate your survival in liters of diesel and kilograms of grain. Reindeer Island is the fortress of sanity, a place for those who find peace in the most hostile environments Canada has to offer. Island number 5, Hans Island, Nunavut. This is Hans Island. It is exactly 1.3 square kilometers of nothing. No trees, no soil, no water. For nearly 50 years, this tiny rock was the site of the most unusual conflict in human history, the Whiskey War. Canadian and Danish sailors would take turns landing on the island, removing the other country's flag, planting their own, and leaving a bottle of Canadian Club or Danish schnapps for the next guys. It was a tug-of-war over a piece of land that technically didn't exist in any legal framework until 2022. In 2022, Canada and Denmark officially split the island. But in doing so, they created a 2026 legal anomaly. Because Hans Island is now part of both Nunavut and Greenland, it represents a unique international gray zone. Living free on Hans Island is the hardest version of the Canadian dream. It is a true Arctic desert. In 2026, survival here requires a level of planning that borders on the impossible. You have to fly in every drop of water, every calorie of food, and every watt of power. Because there is no soil, you can't bury anything. Because there are no trees, there is no fuel. Your 2026 survival kit isn't a tent and a fishing rod. It's a closed-loop atmospheric water generator and a high-output solar array that can track the 24-hour Arctic sun. You aren't just escaping society here. You are escaping the very requirements of human biology. Hans Island is this sovereign void. It's a monument to the fact that even a barren rock can be worth a 50-year war if it represents freedom. But if you think the Arctic is the only place with jurisdictional confusion, wait until we head south. Because on island number 4, we're heading to a place that belongs to Canada. But to get there, you have to ask a foreign superpower for permission. The reason these islands are forgotten is because they were once prisons of silence. But in 2026, the silence is gone. Satellite internet has turned these death traps into digital sanctuaries. You can now run a Wall Street hedge fund from a cabin on number 3. The isolation is gone, but the legal freedom remains. Island number 4, Campobello Island, New Brunswick. Welcome to Campobello, perhaps North America's strangest geographic anomaly. To the casual observer, it belongs to the United States, connected to Lubeck, Maine by a permanent bridge. Yet, the flag flying over the post office is the maple leaf. In 2026, this Canadian island has become the ultimate international loophole. For the freedom seeker, it offers a split-personality lifestyle in the gap between two superpowers. Real estate here remains remarkably affordable because of the bureaucracy tax. To reach the Canadian mainland, you must endure a two-ferry journey or drive through an entire foreign country. Living in this administrative limbo means navigating biometric border checks just to buy a bag of cement or visit a hospital. However, the true 2026 appeal lies in the Bay of Fundy's raw power. Technical homesteaders are flocking here to experiment with microtidal power. By harnessing the old sow, the Western Hemisphere's largest whirlpool, innovators are bypassing rising electricity rates and plugging directly into the moon's gravitational pull. Campobello is a diplomatic void for those who don't mind a border guard knowing their business in exchange for a life forgotten by the masses. But if a bridge to Maine seems complicated, wait until we head to the Pacific. On island number 3, the houses aren't just off-grid, they aren't even on the ground. Island number 3, the Discovery Islands, British Columbia. In the Pacific Northwest, the grid is a choice, not a requirement. Deep within the Discovery Island archipelago, the terrain becomes so vertical and the forest so dense that traditional construction is nearly impossible. The solution? Residents have abandoned the land entirely to build on the water. In 2026, this region hosts the floating frontier. A float house is exactly as it sounds, a home built on a log float. For decades, these dwellings existed in a jurisdictional gray zone. If a house wasn't attached to the land, it didn't exist to the taxman. Today, it is a high-stakes game of administrative hide-and-seek. Living in unincorporated regions means no building inspectors and no municipal property taxes. The tax you pay here is marine maintenance. Instead of painting siding, you're diving beneath your floorboards to inspect the integrity of your logs. These are not mere shacks, but high-tech survival pods. Experts in microhydro and solar hybrid systems, residents harness mountain streams to power 2026 smart grid homes. With high-speed satellite links, they trade stocks and design software while the tide rises 6 meters beneath them. You aren't just off-grid, you are off-ground. It is the buoyant void, where the only neighbor is a passing pod of orcas. If you think living on a log is extreme, wait until we head to the roof of the world. On island number 2, forgotten status is a matter of life and death, and a grocery bill can outweigh a month's rent. Island number 2, Baffin Island, the Outskirts. If you want to truly be forgotten, you go north, not to the suburbs of Ontario, but to the high Arctic. Baffin Island is a vertical world of rock and ice. While hubs like Iqaluit grow, the outskirts along the Cumberland Sound remain the most sparsely populated inhabited lands on Earth. In 2026, the freedom of Baffin is absolute, but the logistics premium is brutal. With no roads to the mainland, every supply arrives by plane or summer sea lift. Living in the unorganized wilderness means bypassing property tax, but paying a staggering price for survival. Fuel can cost 3 times the national average. Here, being forgotten is a double-edged sword. The government won't bother you, but if you run out of flour in February, help won't arrive until the spring thaw. Why stay? Because the high Arctic is finally digitally accessible. Thanks to 2026 Arctic orbit satellites, Baffin enjoys the same internet speeds as Vancouver. A new wave of ice nomads, data analysts, and writers are using advanced passive house technology to thrive in $-50 sea dollar temperatures. By utilizing triple-layer insulation and heat recovery ventilators, they have transformed the Arctic from a land of mere endurance into the last quiet place for deep focus. Baffin is the infinite void, but our journey ends at a place that wasn't just forgotten, it was intentionally left to rot. On island number 1, we head to the ghost archipelago of Lake Athabasca, where the Cold War never ended. Island number 1, the Lake Athabasca Ghost Islands, Saskatchewan. We have reached the end of the map, the Lake Athabasca Archipelago. While the world marched into the 21st century, these islands remained frozen in 1953. Once the heart of Canada's uranium boom, the collapse of the empire in the 1980s left behind entire workshops and docks. Today, they represent the ultimate administrative void. In 2026, these islands offer a legally unique freedom. While you cannot own crown land through squatting, many structures exist in ownerless limbo. Under 2026 caretaker provisions, those who maintain these abandoned buildings are largely ignored. The cost of a demolition crew far exceeds the land's value. You can effectively inherit a lakeside cabin for the price of sweat equity. As long as you aren't leaking oil, the system is happy to let you remain a ghost in a ghost town. The radioactive shadow of the mines acts as a psychological barrier, keeping the crowds away. Savvy homesteaders now use real-time dosimetry and advanced filtration to ensure safety, focusing instead on the true danger, the logistics of the void. With the ice road season shrinking to just 6 weeks, survival depends on a February stockpile and a Starlink uplink. These forgotten islands are Canada's last escape hatches. Freedom isn't free. It costs risk and labor. But for those who see opportunity in unorganized spaces, the ruins of the atomic age offer a sanctuary of total independence. You now have the map. The question is, do you have the courage to be forgotten? If you're ready to leave the grid behind, hit that subscribe button and join the Global Haven community. Check the description for our 2026 Island Registry Guide. I'll see you in the void. Most people want the idea of escape, but they aren't ready for the silence. Canada's forgotten islands are waiting. They don't want your taxes, they want your resilience. If you're one of the crazy ones planning a move to the unorganized north, check the link in the description for the 2026 Crown Land Registry Guide. Hit subscribe if you're tired of the municipal grid, and tell me in the comments, which island did you lose your heart to? I'll see you in the void.